In this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the steps to create a simple 3D model. The model we're going to work on is going to be a full-sized bookshelf. So this will give us an opportunity for me to show you some tools as well as to talk about some 3D modeling concepts. So the very first thing we want to do with our model, for our model, is to create the primitive that's in a close shape to what our final is going to be. And I want to do kind of a larger, more elegant bookshelf. So I'm going to start off with a cube, and it's going to be more or less the size of the finished one. So let's go ahead and go to our attribute editor and find the correct node, and let's get this in closer shape to how it should be. So as far as a width, these are usually maybe about 3 feet wide, which is really close to a meter, so close enough for us. So let's make it a meter wide. I do want it to be taller, so we want it to be closer to maybe like a 7 or 8 foot tall one, so maybe 250 centimeters. 220. That'll be good. And for our depth, we want it to be able to fit books, but we don't want it insanely wide. So maybe let's start off with, what does 30 centimeters look like? It could be wider than that. Let's jump it up to 40. And not quite. Let's do 50. That looks good. For the nature, I'm thinking about how I'm going to 3D model this. I think these would be great dimensions of 100, 220, and 50. So let me first, let me remember that height of 220 because I do want to bump it up with my move tool so that the bottom would be sitting on the grid. So if it is 220, I know I need to raise it by half that, so that'd be 110. And let me move that pivot point to the bottom. So I am going to hit edit pivot. I'm going to hold X for a grid snap, and I'm going to snap it. That's close. I might need to zoom in a little bit. There we go. And turn that off. Let me rename this to bookshelf. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze its transform, and I'm going to delete its history. So now I am good to model this. Okay, so I'm going to first kind of carve out the middle, like the inside of it, and I'm going to pretend that this was kind of a I want it to have kind of like a frame around it. It's not just going to be like a solid, one piece of wood, one piece of wood. I want it to look like it has maybe some like casing around it, so it looks a little bit fancier. So that means I'm going to do a lot more extruding than the basics. So let me get my face select. Make sure I'm selecting the right face. I do want to make sure I'm selecting this face here. Yes. I want to select that face. That is correct. And I am going to then get my scale tool, and I'm going to do my first scale, and I'm going to kind of scale it, and then I'm going to stop. So if I hold shift and extrude it this way and release, we can see that it is not even on all those sides. And I really don't want it to be that way. I kind of want it to, be even on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments at this point. So I want to keep these nice numbers. One thing I can do to help this would be to turn my step snap on. So I'm going to set it to absolute. And I'm going to set the step snap to 1 centimeter. I'm working very coarsely right now. I'm not doing any kind of fine detail work. So setting it to the centimeter is probably going to be fine. And let's see. So this is at -50. This is at -43.74. That's a little much. What does -45 look like? So it'd be a 5 centimeter wide kind of casing around it. And that's probably pretty good. I have to remember that the board over here would have some thickness to it too. So that looks nice. I'm going to go over here and select this one and just type 45. So I'm going to need these to be the same. So if this is at 0, I know that this needs to then be at 5. This is at 220, so this needs to be at 215. And I have a nice even box around that. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab this one. I'm going to hold Shift and extrude it inwards. Remember, I do have my step snap on, so these are actually snapping. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to release it, and it is at 22 centimeters. So 25, 22, which means it's a thickness of 3 centimeters, which is fine. I want it to be kind of visible. And I'm actually going to delete this because I don't want it for the next step. Because what I need to do now is I need to extrude this so that these have a backing on it. And the way I'm going to do this, because if I just extruded it, I could do a scale that seems really sloppy. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these edges all the way around, get my scale tool, hold Shift to extrude it, and just extrude it a little bit. Just a tiny little bit. Oh, you can see it sticking through. That's okay, I can fix it. So if I rotate around, I can see I now have like an inside part. Again, I'm going to fix this real quick. So what is my original at? My original is at 22. So I'm going to, I was looking at the wrong number, 45, there we go. So this one is going to be 45, 47 would work. So it's just 2 centimeters thick. This one is at 5. I gotta find that, I think it stuck through the bottom. It did. So what did I say, 2 centimeters thick? So that should be at 3. This one should be easy. Negative 47. Then last, the top. I'll have to push that one down. And let's see, 215, so 217. What does that look like in there? All right, nice. I'm then going to get my select tool, double click this edge. I'm going to do another extrude. So I'm going to hold, get my move tool, hold Shift, extrude it inwards. I don't want to go through the back. I don't want it to be too far, but I can eyeball this for now. What is it at? Negative 22. The back is negative 25. So that's 3 centimeters thick. That seems pretty good. So I'm just double clicked it to reselect it, and I do need to fill this in. Multiple ways we can do that. We could just select one edge. Let me show you some ways. Select one edge, hold Shift, select the other edge. So I got those two selected, and I can just do a connect. I'm sorry, a bridge. It'll bridge those together. The other way, if I get my select tool, hold Shift and double click, so I have the whole hole selected, I can use the mesh. I'm sorry, where is that? I always lose it. It is under mesh. Fill hole to fill that hole in. So now I have a nice completed kind of bookcase without shelves yet, but it even has like the nice little lip on the inside. It looks really super fancy. So let's go ahead and add some shelves, and I don't want to extrude them out. There really isn't a reason to do that because I might want to make them, slightly different, and it's going to add a whole bunch of cuts around. And since I did encase it, I'll never, I'll be able to not see any kind of like issues with it. So what I can do is just create, oops, sorry, just create a single shelf. So I'm going to click the cube to do that. Go to my attribute editor and find this cube. So let me move it up just a little bit. And if you remember, I believe we made this 1 meter wide. We don't actually need it to be a full meter wide. See, it's going to stick through. So we could drop this down to maybe a 98. So it's kind of sticking in a little bit, but it's not going all the way through. Height, let's see, what about 2 centimeters? 3 centimeters. Let's make it like a stouter bookshelf. And for the depth, let's see what would look good. We don't want it going all the way into that. Like that looks kind of weird. We don't want it sticking out the back. What about 45? Maybe 42. And just kind of have it push back there. That's going to look pretty nice. That'll look nice. It doesn't have to touch all the way over. We'd want to be able to move our bookshelves around. If this was ours, there probably would be a little bit of a gap between those. So 98, 3, 42 sounds good. Before I do anything else with this, I want to kind of delete out some polygons I'm never going to see. So since these 3 sides are sunk in, I'm never going to see them. There's no reason to keep them there. So let me hide that bookshelf real quick. I'm going to go around and I'm going to delete out these polygons. So select that one, and that one. We don't need those. Then I can unhide my bookshelf. And I do want to give this a little bit more finesse because it's really rigid right now. It's really hard on those edges. So I'm going to smooth them out a little bit by beveling them. So I'm going to select those 2 edges, do a bevel. That's a little too much, maybe a 0.1, 0.2. That should be good. And remember that beveling loves to keep them hard. We don't want that kind of look. Since it's probably like a wooden bookshelf, it wouldn't look that hard. Let's select those edges and soften those edges. Looks a lot better now. Just a tiny little bit. You can kind of, we're going to do it to the main bookshelf too once we're done. But we can work with this. So let's see. We can start to position these now if we want to. Let's see. Maybe like 5 of them. So if we know that this has a height of between these 2, so 215. So what if our tallest, shortest one, maybe around here, let's put a nice even 40. Maybe one right here, a nice, let's just do 180. It's 220 all the way up, right? So let's put one right in the middle. So that should be at 110. Bookshelves don't necessarily have to have their shelves in an even distribution. Sometimes the lower ones might be bigger and the upper ones might be shorter. I'm just hitting Control D to duplicate this. So maybe... $70. We'll push this one down a little bit more. $30. No, I don't like that there. That's the nice thing since we did not extrude these out, we can fix them on the fly and make changes as we need. Now I'm going to push this one up higher, maybe about there, 80. Then make this one up higher so that we can put some really big books on the bottom. That looks good. Okay. This one can be a little bit higher. Maybe put one here. Push these up a little bit. Changing my mind. some up there. This one can go a little bit more. And we can play with this till we get something that we like. That looks good. Usually the shelves are a little bit shorter, so you can put lighter things, and then the heavier stuff goes on the bottom, and that looks pretty nice to me. All right. Let's clean up this one a little bit. I do want to kind of bevel some of these edges. So I'm going to get my select tool, double click, hold shift, double click. I'm not going to bother to bevel this inner edge. We don't really see it very well. Just those two. So let's do a bevel. It's way too much. 0.2. It left it faceted. I don't really want to go through and accidentally soften all of these because I don't. So I'm just going to individually double click, hold shift, double click, and do a soften edge. That looks good. Nice clean bookshelf. Okay, let's attach this together. So I'm going to select bookshelf, select all of these, and then I'm going to hold shift to combine to make sure I am doing it on the world origin. I'm going to click apply. Hit close. I need to clean up my history, so I'm going to hold shift, select all of them, delete my history, freeze my transform, and refix this name for me. Let's push this just a little bit farther. I think our bookshelf should actually be having some little feet on the bottom. So I do need to bump this up a little bit to model some feet. I'm not quite sure what I want these feet to look like though, but I can kind of play with it a little bit until we get something we like. So let me move this up. Remember, this is sitting right at the origin, so I can kind of nicely tell it how high I want these feet. They shouldn't be too high. Generally, a bookshelf would not have very high feet. Maybe 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters. I'm not quite certain yet. Let's model some feet and see what they look like. So to do that, I am going to first create a cube. My feet are going to look very cubey. It's a good place to start. Fix the attribute editor for this, and oops, let's make these maybe 4 by 4 by 4s. I do need to make sure I bump this up. And we can start to, see what this looks like. I think 4, maybe 5. Let's bump this up to a 5. 5 centimeters. It'll give us a little more room to play with this. So I do know ultimately whatever feet I make, I do not need this top polygon. But I can use this right now just to bump that up back to 5 and then hit delete. I'm then going to kind of start to form this to get a look that I want. Let me kind of position this a little bit nicer. Not that, I'm sorry. I need to go to the object level. Maybe a negative 47, 22. And let's, I'm going to give some more definition to this so I can kind of form this a little bit nicer. So what I'm going to do is I am going to insert an edge loop. I don't think I've shown this yet. I use it so much that I keep it down here. But if you don't have a shortcut key for it, you find it underneath Mesh Tools. Insert edge loop. What this does is very similar to Connect, but instead of putting it directly in the center of it, I can click on an edge, and you can see that I can insert an edge loop anywhere I want. So I want to keep one kind of low, and I want to keep one a little bit higher. So I'm going to put one right here. So that then I can go and grab, I'm going to hit select and move to get out of that. I'm going to select this face. I'm going to pull it outwards, and you can see I can start to kind of form this to look closer to like a foot that you might see on a bookshelf. Give it some more support. I might want to then insert another edge loop. I'm like, it needs a little more shape. It's not just like a bevel. I kind of want to add a little bit more. So I'm going to get my insert edge loop. Maybe put one here. Get my move tool, but I just want to select this edge. I'm going to push it in. Let me turn off my step snap. I'm doing more refined work, so I don't really need it. And that's looking pretty neat, like a little fancy foot. I kind of want to round it a little bit though. I don't like how sharp those are. So let me double click, hold shift, double click, and I'm going to bevel these. And I kind of like that bigger bevel. Like that looks kind of neat. I might need to jump those segments up though, just to kind of round it. There we go. That's nice. And I think I want to bevel these too. So I'm going to double click, hold shift, double click. I don't want these to be as strong of a bevel. Like that's kind of weird looking. I'm going to drop this down to like a 0.2. Let's see. Oh, maybe 0.1. Yeah, there we go. And let's not forget that these are probably going to look really weird. Yeah, we got those hard edges. That's not what I really want. I'm going to just select all of them and soften them and fix a couple of them. So I don't want actually this bottom one to be soft, but it's easier for me to soften all of them and reselect these bottom ones. Actually, I'm going to delete this polygon. Don't need it. Makes it easier to select two and harden that edge again. Same thing with the top. Oh, I forgot to delete that polygon, didn't I? Let's delete that polygon on the top. I forgot to do that. Double click, harden that edge. We got like a little fancy there. Okay. That's too hard for me. It's bothering me. Double click. Let's bevel that. Let's drop this to a 0.2, 0.4. And I can add, oh, of course, I've messed up all of my nice soft edges. Bevel loves messing up soft edges. See that? It's sloppy. Let's fix that. Soften. I assume this one's broken too. Let's see. There we go. Big takeaways. Notice how when I'm adding definition, I'm working more like a sculptor. When you sculpt things, like think about how you would sculpt out of marble. You don't start working on the details. You don't try to make everything be the exact shape and fine detail at the start. You start really big. You work in really big chunks and then you refine it down and refine it down. It's very easy to get your rough shape and then use bevels to refine it, or to use your insert edge loops and refine it some more. Don't forget to use your harden and soften edges to make it look even more refined. So we need them all four corners. I don't want to model this again. That'd be a real waste of my time. So let's do a couple of tricks. So the first trick, if you watched the cake video, you probably saw how I use the pivot point. I'm going to use it again, but I'm going to show you another interesting way that we can do this. So I do want to put the pivot point back in the origin. This is why it's always really handy to model everything to an origin so that we know that this is directly in the middle. So if I get them in all the corners, it's a lot easier to duplicate these kind of things around. So I'm going to hit edit, make sure I'm at this level. I'm going to hit edit pivot. I'm going to hold down X to snap to the grid. Release. so that it's there. Okay. So the rotation isn't going to fully work with this one because it isn't a perfect circle. So if I hit Control D and I rotate this one like 180 degrees. Oops, I rotated it wrong. Sorry. Before I do this, let me do this real quick. Before I do anything fancy, let me make sure I freeze my transform. That's always really important. Okay. Control D. Rotate. So if I rotate this 180 degrees, I'm just kind of manually doing it for now to show you. It does not like me doing it at that angle. Let me do it like this. There we go. I'm not going to get it at that corner. I can get this other corner, right? So if I type 180, it'll pop in the other corner, but I'm not getting this corner. Like I can't, because it's, like I said, not a perfect circle. So how do we do this? Watch this. So I'm going to duplicate that first one again. Rather than rotate, I'm going to get my scale tool. I'm going to scale it, you know, so we see like this direction. See this? I'm going to scale it on the X, -1. You see that? I did something a little funky, but we can fix that. But do you see how it got it to the other side? The only issue is it did kind of invert our polys, but I'm going to show you how to fix that. But that may or may not happen. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. So I can do the same thing for this one. I'm going to duplicate it, scale it on the X, -1. So, oh no, my polys are dark. The reason is because we're actually, and they're light on the inside, it's because it flipped them inside out. We can easily fix this. I'm going to show you how. It's a lot easier than trying to rotate and then position it to do this. So first, let me select all these. I'm going to make sure to freeze their transforms and delete their histories. I'm then going to take these ones that are black. And this might occur in other situations, not just what I did. Like you're working and like, oh no, why is it inside out? How do I fix this? We're going to grab all those polys. So poly select, just select all of them. I'm going to go to mesh display. And we want to see this reverse. Reverse. You see that? Watch. I'm going to click it. And they are now flipped the right way. Oops, what's going on there? Did I not select all of them? Hold on. Oh, I have camera-based selection on from before. Do you see that? Whoops. Always forget to turn that back off. Let's fix that. Okay. Undo, undo. I didn't select, the issue is I hadn't selected all the polys. So let's turn camera-based selection off and try reselecting all of those faces again. There we go. That's better. Okay. Mesh display. Reverse. There we go. Same thing with this one. I don't know why. It doesn't always do that where it reverses your polygons, but it's a good way to kind of show you if you see it occur, what it means and how to fix it. It's very easy to fix. And now we have little feet on there. So let's attach it together. Bookshelf, feet. I'm going to hold shift before I do my combine because my pivot point is really strange right now because remember I moved up the bookshelf. I do want to make sure it goes back to the world origin. So I'm going to hit apply and close. We have our messy outliner. So I'm going to hold shift and select those and then delete the history, freeze the transform and fix the name on this bookshelf. And now we have a nice little bookshelf. So some big takeaways. We don't need to keep this as a solid mesh. I modeled the feet separately as well as the shelves. But we do want to be able to, duplicate things around easy. And I used the scale tool and the rotate tool. I also showed you what a flipped polygon looks like and how to fix it, and a little bit more about using extrudes. So we could spend some more time. Usually this style of shelf, you might have like little brackets here, like a little for them to sit on both sides. That would be easy to model. They're very close to this. Like we could even reuse these as little shelf holders. Maybe putting a little more detail, like maybe there would be some fancy stuff on the corners. We could add a lot to this shelf, but this is a really great starter shelf. So hopefully you enjoyed modeling this. I do recommend trying to push it a little bit further to see what you can get.